With the latest Fantastic Four movie being about to come out, there is no better time to make an overview of the comic. It begins with this cover, which is iconic. I have seen it 100 times at various sites and videos. It was made to display the powers of the heroes with accompanying info-dumping speech bubbles, but it doesn't do a good job at selling you the characters, since they come off as weak even when displaying their powers. There is a girl that goes invisible but still gets caught. There is a guy who is made of rubber and gets trapped in a mundane rope. There is some orange monster that gently pushes a car. And there is a flying burning guy, easily the most impressive of the bunch, but he doesn't attack the monster, so he's not really doing much yet. This is not how you win first impressions. Well, not nowadays. Back in 1961, when it was first published, people really liked this bullshit. It was super successful because the bar was really low. Even when you read the first issue, you are not given the impression the main characters are heroes. In fact, they come off as villains. They steal a space shuttle from the army, they destroy buildings and airplanes, and in general, they terrorize the population. It's the kind of people you would expect an actual hero to appear and send them to prison. On top of that, they don't seem very bothered by what they are doing. They casually rampage through a city just because they are in a hurry, causing millions of dollars in collateral damage. They don't get punished for it because nobody around them is very strong, and they don't feel bad about it. The scene is supposed to make them cool, like look how powerful they are, smashing everything in their path without having to face any consequences. They are villains, how more obvious does it have to be? And people back then loved this shit. Obviously, as soon as the first actual villain appears, the mindless audience immediately sides with the Fantastic Four, just because he is someone worse than them. It's a very common trick used in manga even today. You know, making the protagonist a complete asshole. But then he faces one-dimensional rapists, and now all of a sudden he's a great hero who does no harm. Speaking of the villains, in the typical 60s fashion, they just have to info-dump their entire backdrop story and evil master plan to strangers they just met and who only plan to kill them as soon as they stop yapping needlessly. Something which of course does not happen. Our heroes escape when the info dump ends and the entire evil base blows up by the villain in the final page. So if you break down the first issue, it's 90% info dump about how the heroes got their powers, all the destruction they caused with them, then the villain blubbering about his past and his plan to destroy the world, before everything ends in one page by the villain. The heroes didn't do shit, they just escaped as the villain blows up his own base. And I might as well point out how they don't have a hero's calling, that is, something that motivates them to want to be heroes instead of villains. Spider-Man got his calling when his uncle died. The X-Men got their calling when evil people don't allow mutants to coexist with normies. The Fantastic Four have no such motivation. They just decided to stop the bad guys just because. The villain is not any better, he wants to destroy the world because he's ugly. That's it, he's ugly, so the world must be destroyed. Okay, what's the difference with the Thing, the orange monster, who is also ugly? Why doesn't he want to destroy the world? The setup for the entire comic is so flimsy, and despite that, the comic was a massive success. Boy, was the bar really low. The second issue is about the introduction of the alien Skrulls, who are mostly known for their shape-shifting abilities. The MCU made them poor little alien immigrants who only want to come live next to you despite having completely alien ethics, and this ending up becoming a cultural invasion. I wonder what recent events inspired this change to their origin. Anyways, in the comic they begin as typical alien invaders. Their master plan for taking over the planet is to impersonate the Fantastic Four and commit crimes so that the humans will turn against them. What an amazing plan! The Fantastic Four were already committing crimes and felt nothing about it. The public doesn't even know they stopped the first villain. They are not seasoned or even established heroes, so what kind of a plan is this? Also, out of all the superheroes on Earth, the aliens consider the Fantastic Four to be the greatest obstacle to world domination. Not the Avengers, not the X-Men, four random people with no real feats yet, with no real motivation to be heroes, and who are only known for the crimes they are committing. How are these aliens smart enough to be an interstellar empire? The plan works and the army arrests the Fantastic Four for the alleged crimes. Something they hadn't done so far, despite all the crimes the actual heroes have committed. And what do our heroes do to prove they did not steal army equipment and caused millions in collateral damage? They steal more army equipment and they cause even more millions in collateral damage. Clap for our heroes, everyone! How do our heroes defeat the Skrulls, an interstellar empire with technology that is several thousands of years ahead of us? They show them low-resolution photographs of monsters from low-budget TV series, claiming they are defending the Earth. Somehow, the almighty interstellar empire hasn't invented scanners or knows what is scouting, so it believes them and retreats. Dumbest aliens ever! The next opponent worth talking about is Dr. Doom, who began as a generic evil cultist and ended up being a major villain not only of the Fantastic Four, but of every hero imaginable. And no, he does not look like Tony Stark. That's just Hollywood being desperate for attention now that the MCU is past its prime. In the classic 60s comics, everyone is simping for the girl in the team. It was all part of pointing out the men are not gay because of that Batman essay that made a lot of parents oversensitive. And thus the terrible problem of two men talking to each other means they are gay, something the queers say even today, was corrected by having the men constantly running after women who are constantly being abducted by the villain. Just one issue ago, Namor kidnapped Susan Storm like the simp he was, and in this issue, Dr. Doom kidnaps her to force the rest into doing his bidding. And by bidding, I mean making them commit crimes. Whoa, this is new, the heroes committing crimes? I never expected that. The one who saves the day this time is the damsel in distress, by casually becoming invisible and opening the door so the others can escape. Kudos for being useful despite being a woman, but it came at the cost of making Dr. Doom to come off as a complete idiot. I mean, really, he has technology that is several thousands of years ahead of us, and he let his prisoner completely unattended. What a moron! The next interesting villain is Ramatut, which I am sure none of you normies know about him. It's because he eventually becomes Kang the Conqueror, who you do know if you are following the MCU. This guy was supposed to be the new top villain after Thanos, until the actor portraying him was found guilty of some nasty things and he had to be removed from the continuity. Funny how things work, huh? It's perfectly fine to play a character who has committed unspeakable crimes across time and space and is abusing the wife of another man, but the moment you don't treat your wife nicely, you are a monster. But no worries, because the villain who replaces him in the MCU is Dr. Doom, who does not look like Tony Stark. The switch is not as drastic as you might think, since Kang is a descendant of Doom, and he is even using the same technological gimmicks of his ancestor. For example, if you watched Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, they become really small and they find Kang in that universe. In the comics, it was Doom, it wasn't Kang, and Ant-Man was still there. You know, the guy who didn't treat his wife nicely in the comics. Yeah, that was the end of his career as well. Funny how the same thing happened to the actor playing Kang, isn't it? Anyways, on this issue, Kang acts like a pharaoh and plans to... Wait, what? Pharaoh? Oh shit, there's a typo on the cover! This is how little they cared about quality back then. Do you think they would mistype domestic violence as well? Anyways, even while Kang acts like a pharaoh, the setup is the exact same as when Dr. Doom kidnapped the girl, so the men would commit crimes in his name. Yes, they commit crimes once again. Our heroes, everyone! This time it was the Thing that saved the day by randomly losing his powers for a while, which was enough to remove his chains. Yes, he saved the day not with strategy but by complete chance. Anyways, the structure of the story is the same as the one with Dr. Doom, and just like with Dr. Doom, Kang does not remain a main villain of the Fantastic Four. He ends up clashing with every heroic team. get used to that, since it's going to repeat many times in the future. What you eventually realize about the Fantastic Four is that they are nothing but a springboard. They exist to introduce characters into the Marvel comics and then let other comics to flesh them out. The Fantastic Four by themselves have nothing interesting going on, unlike the X-Men and Spider-Man, who had a ton of thematic depth right from the start. This comic never goes beyond, here's a quirky family of superheroes! They commit more crimes than the major villains, so it's basically Rick and Morty. They have a few issues that persist, like Susan Storm having the hots for Namor, the king of simps. But nothing comes out of it, she never cheats on her husband. The Thing is in love with a blind girl, but nothing comes out of it either, it's not like they marry. They just have silly missions where nothing really happens at the end or affects their lives. And I have to point out these composite images the artists are occasionally using, a collage of actual grayscale photographs, which looks so off compared to the art style of the rest of the comic. This is not adding realism, it breaks immersion by making it seem like the comic artists didn't bother drawing backgrounds. But it does symbolize the comic as a whole, which ends up being a collage of ideas meant to be cut in pieces and be used in other comics. This will keep happening for years to come. Characters will keep being introduced before they become their own comic with their own storylines, and leaving the Fantastic Four as an unchanging quirky family. By the way, most of these characters never managed to be popular, despite the promotion by a comic that was somehow very successful. They remained mostly obscure. I mean, who really cares about the Inhumans? People just like the design and powers of Black Bolt, and they might remember Crystal for becoming the girlfriend of the Human Torch. The Black Panther managed to be somewhat more popular, but only through blaxploitation. He was a token black superhero at a time when 99.9% of superheroes were white. Well, that is not the case anymore. Today more than half of all heroes are not white, or straight. Anyways, he was there more for the representation of Africans, a tokenized hero for those who can't identify with a character who does not belong in the same race they do, despite heroism have nothing to do with race or gender. Wakanda forever, am I right? Oh, also, is anyone surprised that as soon as the black man got replaced by black girl bosses in the following movies and series, the token representation lost all its value? Then we have the introduction of Silver Surfer and Galactus. These characters are so popular, even the normies know about them, even before the terrible second live-action movie in the 2000s. They too went to have their own storylines and mythos after getting springboarded by the Fantastic Four, who once again had no change. This time the resolution was more outrageous than usual, since they didn't even stop Galactus with luck or some cheap way they came up with at the last moment. An alien appears and basically tells them of a MacGuffin that can stop even Galactus. Sure, they had to go find it, but that doesn't change the fact that they didn't save the day by doing something on their own. Someone else had to tell them what to do. The Fantastic Four are constantly coming off as weak, and they always win in anticlimactic ways. Even the X-Men of the 60s were better, thanks to Xavier being a completely overpowered troll. Why was this comic ever popular? The strategy of only introducing characters and having no meaningful change continues into the next year with the introduction of the Kree Empire. You might remember them from the crappy Captain Marvel movie. Apparently the Skrulls weren't enough of a threat. We needed a second alien empire constantly attacking Earth. And on top of that, the two empires had to be at war with each other as an excuse for why they are not attacking Earth with their entire army. Because, clearly, Earth cannot defend itself against aliens who believe anything you tell them, and who are fooled by a few low-resolution photographs of low-budget TV series. The next year was the first actual change since the beginning of the comic. It's the birth of Franklin Richards, the son of Mr. Fantastic and the Invisible Girl. This kid is completely overpowered and will become part of major events in the far future. By the way, this scene you see here is impossible to happen nowadays. A white man married to a white woman and having a child? That's so queerphobic. And they dare to say, hey man? How Islamophobic! By the way, the birth happens at the same time as the introduction of Annihilus, the ruler of the negative zone who wants to kill everyone in the universe. He's one-dimensional, but at least he proves he means business when many years later he actually wipes out a big part of the universe. You feel he's a galactic-level threat, unlike most enemies who are nothing but hot air. After that comes a very dry period for all comics. The X-Men got discontinued, Spider-Man became a guest star in his own comic, which became mostly about the social uproar of workers and black people, and the Fantastic Four stopped introducing characters that would be remembered down the line. The only part I found really funny was when President Nixon was berating the heroes for failing the nation and for saying America never lost a war. These statements were made before Watergate and the Vietnam War, and it's an example for why most contemporary references age like milk. In those issues, the Fantastic Four come off as if they are working for the bad guys and commit crimes whenever Nixon tells them to do something. Oh my goodness, the Fantastic Four are acting like villains? That has never happened before. Anyways, the dry period lasted a lot longer for the Fantastic Four than it did for the other major comics. In the mid-70s, Spider-Man had to deal with the death of Gwen Stacy, and the X-Men got the second team that made them the most popular superhero comic. This comic, on the other hand, was stuck in limbo for a dozen years. The only semblance of change was the temporal addition of extra superheroes, seemingly forever, only for them to drop out whenever the sales go down and they need to be replaced by other superheroes in hopes of getting more sales. There's no point in mentioning who they are, since whatever happens with them amounts to nothing besides Brazilian soap opera drama. Lots of shipping, lots of cucking, and lots of marriages that don't last much because the status quo has to be maintained. Then finally something happens in 1983. Mr. Fantastic had the chance to kill Galactus, but instead spared his life. He devised a plan to get rid of everyone who threatens Earth, so he ordains which planets Galactus would go after next. The first target becomes the Skrull homeworld, and Galactus, bound by his promise and unable to hold back his hunger, casually murders billions of people. This is how canonically the Skrulls cease to be one-dimensional evil alien invaders and become victimized immigrants. Oh, I didn't want to conquer the universe, please forgive me now that I have no planet. It's also when the past of Galactus begins to be revealed, along with how he feels guilt over the death he is causing. Oh, I didn't want to destroy thousands of civilizations, please forgive me now that I'm being forced to kill people I normally wouldn't. Meanwhile, the hero becomes a complete monster. Mr. Fantastic wouldn't stop there. He would send Galactus at hundreds of hostile planets, and he would kill quadrillions of people just because some of them were after Earth. This is not something a hero would do, but then again, this is not the first time the Fantastic Four are doing something evil. This event leads to Mr. Fantastic getting arrested by an alliance of alien civilizations that have been attacked by Galactus in the past. Down to it, although the Skrulls were evil, it doesn't mean it's okay to murder them so casually. And morality issues aside, if a mortal can control Galactus, what stops him from destroying every civilization just to be sure nobody will ever attack Earth? The power would be enough to drive anyone mad. This is easily the most serious moment in the comics so far, because it is not about good or evil anymore, it's about life in general. The resolution is, unfortunately, a cop-out, since the cosmic entities show the jury why Galactus is a neutral force and that the universe is so big, the partial loss of one civilization means nothing in the long run. Mr. Fantastic is casually pardoned after he promises never to do it again. Yes, he got away with killing billions of creatures just because he had good intentions, and his actions don't matter on a universal level. What a bullshit way to avoid consequences. And if you think the others would be constantly berating him for what he did, that didn't happen either, because in the same year the Secret Wars event happened, where everyone was too busy getting constantly trolled by the Beyonder, who had reality manipulation powers and could do pretty much anything he wanted. He just overshadowed the crimes Reed committed, and the whole thing was quickly forgotten. For the next dozen years, there is another dry period of nothing really happening besides more pointless Brazilian soap opera. It only ended because of Onslaught, a major event which was meant to affect all Marvel comics. Meaning it is not something the Fantastic Four could casually overlook, since it was an artificial way to shrink the market now that the entire industry imploded because of corporate shenanigans. So in case you don't already know, Onslaught, the evil side of Xavier from the X-Men, kidnaps Franklin Richards and uses his Omega-level powers to basically summon enemies left and right. It was just an excuse to have everyone fighting everyone else before they team up against Onslaught and, air quotes, sacrifice themselves so he can be stopped. This gave a soft reboot to all the Marvel comics of that time. The Fantastic Four got a Heroes Reborn treatment, which meant redoing several key events in an alternative Earth created by Franklin Richards, and then coming back to continue their normal lives as if nothing had changed. So basically this event ended up with everything going back to how they were before. By the way, I mentioned an alternative Earth, didn't I? This is gonna be something that will keep happening frequently from here on. The Council of Reeds is introduced, which is basically thousands of variants of Mr. Fantastic from thousands of alternative dimensions coming together to help one another. It sounds epic on paper and opens up an infinite number of possibilities, but just like with anything that involves the multiverse, it makes everything to feel pointless. If a character dies on one dimension, you can casually replace him with a variant of a different dimension. This storyline is actually what inspired the Council of Ricks in Rick and Morty, where they are constantly point how meaningless the multiverse is when nothing is lost and nothing is gained, no matter what you do. It was the same for the Fantastic Four. After this plotline, everything got trivialized. No matter the scale of the threat, it never felt like anyone was ever in danger. And I think the writers realized that as well, since the action lowered significantly from this point forward. It became very slice of life, and the heroes were mostly dealing with everyday issues. At some point, child welfare wanted to take away their kids because they are in an unsafe environment. Really? Does it have anything to do with fighting solar system threats and casually traveling to other dimensions since the 60s? Now they care about the safety of the children? Not because their parents are often worse than the criminals they are fighting? Reed was about to murder uncountable amounts of people. What the hell is welfare going to do with superhuman children that can alter the fabric of reality and which are targeted by villains every other week? 2006 was the year when the global event of the Civil War among superheroes happened. You would think it would have a major effects on their lives as they are fighting former allies, and yet it just came down to Reed and Susan taking a break from their marriage because they had different political views regarding the conflict. This global event that shook everything came down to a first world problem. The writers were trying to give the Fantastic Four a relatable side as they did with Spider-Man 45 years after their creation, and it feels so forced and unnatural. I mean, if this aspect was there since the beginning, and if they actually had a hero's calling, instead of acting like villains half the time, then some of this drama might have worked out. But that's not what happened, it's all nonsense. And then something amazing happened. The writers stopped treating the Fantastic Four as a springboard and made a super epic fight with everyone involved. Not in an artificial and meaningless way as they did with Onslaught. It's every major character who was introduced in this comic with a great epilogue. Just on this page I am showing you, you see the Kree, the Inhumans, the Beyonder, who was nerfed to also be an Inhuman, Spider-Man in a white suit and Annihilus. There are more! Dr. Doom joins the Fantastic Four to stop the Celestials that attack the Council of Reeds and plan to destroy every variant. Galactus comes and protects Earth by fighting the Celestials. And then the future versions of the children of the Fantastic Four appear and the Celestials are shitting bricks because they are above Omega-level mutants who can distort reality on a universal scale. This is the most epic shit in the entirety of the comic. And as an epilogue they even travel to the future and see what becomes of Earth in the following millennia. It becomes a utopia basically, where future heroes are using wisely the technologies of Reed and do a lot of good in the universe. If the comic ended right here, it would be perfect. Obviously, the comic didn't end there, it kept going and nothing past this point feels that meaningful. Something as monumental as the new Secret Wars felt closer to fanfiction. It is nothing like the Forever event since it has every character in it as no more than cameos. In it, different universes mixed up and created a chimera of all realities called Battle World. It's basically House of M, only instead of Scarlet Witch, the one behind everything is Doctor Doom, who is now treated like a god. This on paper is where he gets his final redemption, since he got everything he could ever want. The readers though got a complete clusterfuck of a plot where variants of all the Marvel characters live a different life in a completely messed up version of history. It's all one big what-if story, it feels like you are playing with Legos and you mix various sets. It's fun if you want to see a lot of cool crossovers, but at the end of it, it was just another excuse to have a soft reboot akin to what happened with Onslaught. Everything had become bloated again, the sales went down, and so Marvel wanted an excuse to reset things again and keep a few others. And this is where I stopped the analysis, since 2015 is when Marvel became modern and attempted to be more inclusive and less toxic, only to end up being the exact opposite of that. The soft reboot essentially made everyone gay or black, and the plots stopped having continuity since everything resets every few issues. It's the same curse that ruined the X-Men as well as Spider-Man, which I have already gone over. So, in summary, the Fantastic Four comic is trash. It was only used as a springboard to introduce characters, then it attempted to be dramatic with social issues that came way too late to mean anything, and then it didn't end at the Forever event, which had a fine closure for all the major characters. To hell with this nonsense, I don't recommend it.